such an honor to be here today, and such an incredible warm welcome. And I just had the opportunity to have lunch with a few of the students, and I was absolutely blown away just by their commitment, by their questions, and just by their experience. I think this is such a valuable program, and I just, again, am so honored that I could share a little bit of my story with you here today, and then answer any questions you may have. But I just want to say hi and give a little bit of context to the tomboy comment. I did grow up in Northern California. I was a college swimmer and very, very competitive. I was also very, very lucky to grow up in a wonderful family and have an incredible church life that really showed me the value of giving back and supporting others. So when I graduated from college, I was not anywhere near close to becoming a professional swimmer. Apparently that's only Michael Phelps can do that. So that left me with thinking, well, what do I want to do? I know I love service and I know I love helping, so I'm going to be competitive and be the best helper that I can be. And that's what I set out to do. I was fortunate enough to go to grad school and get my master's in social enterprise administration and figure out, what are the best, most effective ways that we can lift people out of poverty and how can we help them thrive. So for the last decade, I've been working in developing countries, spending about a third of my time in sub-Saharan Africa, primarily figuring out how to bring people clean water and sanitation. So I will share just one of the stories of my experience while I was working in Liberia that really affected me. We were driving from Monrovia up north, so it's about a 6-hour drive. It's not far, but there's no roads, so it takes a long time. Just muddy dirt paths in our Range Rover. And we were probably 5 hours, we're probably only an hour away from where we needed to be, when a woman on the street ran up and jumped in front of our car. And so we slammed on the brakes, and she was holding the tiny baby in her arms, and so we got out of the car to see well, what is going on, what does she need? And as we got closer to her, I could see, oh my gosh, she's actually not holding a baby, she's holding a toddler. But the child had become so wasted and so malnourished that she couldn't open her eyes, barely, and she couldn't smile. She just looked back at us. And so it was clear to us at the time that the baby was not going to make it. There's no healthcare facilities nearby. There was nowhere we knew where to go or what to do. And so our driver and translator starts explaining to her that we're not going to be able to help her. And as he's talking to her, he looks over at us and he goes, you know what? She's not even speaking English. She's actually speaking French. And to make matters worse, we come to learn that she had been walking for 3 days through the forest from Guinea, where she lived, in search of help. And I got back in my car and I thought, if I'm supposed to be a good Samaritan, if I'm supposed to be this person on the roadside literally asking me for help, I'm doing a terrible job. We referred her to a local clinic. Found out later the baby passed away. And Liberia is a beautiful country. At last count, there are 4 million people that live there, and there's 300 doctors. So it is a country of enormous opportunity, but also recognizing that if we really want to help people, we can't be flying around trying to service everyone. We need to find ways to build local capacity, to help train people to solve local problems and provide life-saving services to those in need. And so that was one of my big aha moments. And, as I was doing this is what I was seeing every day, and this is what I was primarily visiting, was people who are in need of water and sanitation, people who've been walking. The average woman walks 6 miles every day in search of clean water. And, we hear these horrible stories all the time, and you can imagine all the diseases and the death and destruction that comes from not having access to safe water. But I think what people also aren't seeing, which is what I was seeing, was actually this. This was a well that was about 25 meters away from this same source. It was built a few years before, and you can see there's supposed to be a water spigot, but somebody had taken it out trying to figure out how to fix it, and they had eventually failed. And so what's happening right now in the water sector is that actually 1 out of every 3 wells in sub-Saharan Africa are currently broken. So you have millions of dollars in aid and great intentions from missionaries and nonprofits and local governments going to build these services to give people clean water. And I was going back to visit these communities and realizing that they no longer had clean water because there were no spare parts, there were no tools, there were no trained mechanics. No one knew how to fix it. Everyone was just trying to jimmy-rig a solution to figure out how to get it to work. So the Gates Foundation a few years ago came out with a study showing that there's about 50,000 wells that are currently broken at a cost of about $320 million. So the second most important reason why we started was that as I was going back and visiting villages and giving people clean water, I started to realize there's a pattern of people coming back and saying, I am so grateful for this water, I'm just wondering if you're hiring. There was always someone, every country I went to, who said, thank you so much, here's all my skills, I just really want a job. And that would be heartbreaking for me because here I was, 29 years old, flying around the world and meeting incredibly capable people who were born with potential but just lacked opportunity. And so, what we've realized is like having a job, which we don't ever think about, we just always assume we're going to grow up and we're going to be something great, or I always assumed I was going to be able to do what I wanted to do. But having a good job is just precious and priceless for somebody living in a developing country. Most of the countries where we're working, the unemployment rate is between 40 and 70%. So the Gallup polls is actually conducting the largest poll in history right now. It's going to take 10 years. It spans 160 countries. And it's called the Great Global Dream, where they are polling in 160 countries, different people, and asking them, what's your dream? And they released the findings only 2 years in and said, you know what we're realizing? Everyone is saying the same thing. Is that my great global dream is that I can have a good job. It doesn't matter whether you live in LA or you live in Nairobi. The answer is consistent. People want the opportunity to work because that means they can provide for their family, they can lead healthy lives, they can send their kids to school, and they can thrive. So the third and final reason why we started the Adventure Project is actually my co-founder, Jody, who is a mom with 6 kids. She's incredible. It's why I travel and she doesn't. And she, had this heart for service and heart for helping. She's the wife of a worship pastor. Her last 2 kids were adopted from Sierra Leone, and at that moment she realized, okay, we have a global family. We need to start operating like a global community, and started fundraising through her blog. One day I had the opportunity to take her to Liberia to show her the work we had done before when we were at Charity Water. She was a supporter of ours, and she turned to me and said, I don't really need recognition. I don't want my name on a well. I don't want to have any fanfare with my generosity or gifts. I just want to know that I'm truly helping. And so that really struck a chord with me because I think there are actually a lot of people like that who the most important thing to us is we just want to know that our money is going to the right places and it's delivering the right impact and that the people we're serving are actually benefiting from our gifts and we're actually helping. So we decided, what if we did something and we started our own organization? What if we rally people like you and me to give effectively? And we said, look, we're going to help create local jobs that end up giving back to the local communities. So, for example, we're going to be training men and women to become well mechanics who can then keep those wells working. And therefore, we're providing not only opportunity for those families who are working, but then also providing that entire community with sustainable services. So we do that in two different ways. We're really focused on innovation, and then we're focused on scale. So we're focusing on how can we test new models, new ways of thinking, combining this business-minded approach, and how can we help scale these incredible organizations who are doing it right in local countries and give them the tools and resources that they can thrive and move into new regions. So this is, that's just a great picture of some of our well mechanics in India that we've worked to help train. And so we've supported everything from training well mechanics to educating community healthcare workers. We really work to see how can we build the portfolio, much like if we were a VC, venture capitalist, saying like, let's fund the most effective work. Let's support organizations that are working locally, doing incredible things, training people to become entrepreneurs. Let's provide them with the capital, the marketing support, the tech support, so that they can continue to scale. And for example, I'm just going to give you a short video of one of the women we supported, and her name is Diana. She'll share her story here.
When I was young, pretty young. Oh, sorry. I'm supposed to repeat the question. This hand pump was made for how many families?
Around 25.
25 families. I decided to be an engineer when I was pretty young. So in my community, we had this shallow well. They used to break down a lot, and we didn't have well mechanics. So no one was there to help us. And I used to ask myself, what does this kind of work? I think I should just grow up and give these guys all the help they need. There's so many NGOs that come to Uganda to actually invest in infrastructure. But the problem is they're always looking at new systems. They give the community a system and they think it's done. What happens when this eventually breaks down and the community can't repair it? Then they just go back to the swamp. They're associated with so many problems, especially waterborne diseases. If people keep on investing in new wells, this problem will not be addressed. They don't have hand pump mechanics like readily available. One of our ideas was instead of having to construct new boreholes, we could actually invest in rehabilitations. Water for People is going to recruit quite a number of entrepreneurs, have them trained, and make sure the hand pump is operating so that the communities can have access to clean water. This rehabilitation program is going to create a multitude of jobs. Each well is going to have a caretaker and the entrepreneur. Those are 2 jobs per well already. This lady you see here is very passionate. I love seeing people get what they deserve. We have an opportunity to provide people with safe water forever.
So that was a video we made 3 years ago when we were kicking off this pilot program in Kamwenge, which is a western district of Uganda, home to about 310,000 people. And Diana was the one who really spearheaded this idea that we can give people job skills and train them to become well mechanics, and in return the communities will pay 4 cents per jerry can, very affordable price, to be able to have access to sustainable water services. And so we said, well, we'll get behind this idea. This was a great thesis to test. And at the time, only 40% of the district had access to clean water. And it's so awesome to report that just 3 years in, now 50% of everyone has clean water. And she's literally fixed every broken well in the entire district, which is awesome. So I think now the next step for us is helping her install new water systems where there are populations of people who live in more remote regions who have never had clean water before. And then we're going to come alongside and layer on this business model so that they can ensure that the wells are always working. She had mentioned in the video, but part of the model is that there's a caretaker hired in each village who keeps the well clean, and then he or she collects 4 cents per jerry can. And this is Monday, who's one of the caretakers, and I just love him because I had asked, like, well, what is it like? He had told me he previously was a digger, which he meant was he just dug in his garden for what he could eat and what he could maybe sell, so he didn't have any land, and he was struggling. And I said, you know, what is it like to have a job? And he said, well, it's so great because now I have an office job. And I said, oh, an office job? Like, Monday, that's amazing. Like, tell me more about why this is an office job. And he looked at me like I was crazy, and he said, well, because I have an umbrella. And I was like, oh. But I think he reiterated why it's so important and so incredible for people to have work and the dignity that comes with work and just a place to go every morning where you feel like you can provide for your family and you feel like you can give back to your community. So as we talk about growing and helping more and more people, we realized, we really need to provide tech support so that we know what we're doing, is it measurably impacting people's lives? So we've rolled out a new tech platform called Streamline, which is helping us collect data in real time. So people can go along and, for example, take pictures. This is a farmer, and capture not only, any of her interview questions, but also it geotags every location so we know where the interviews took place, where people live. It can capture any question we have and then sends it back to us in real time and displays it on a live map. So we can learn how are people improving, what are some of the bottlenecks. Across our entire portfolio, we're able to see how people are moving out of poverty. So for example, here's some of the geotagging, and just tells you more about who's working where. So one of the coolest things that has come out of this data, and it said earlier in lunch, is that we've now created just about 1,000 jobs, but we know out of those jobs that parents are all reporting that they're spending money in 2 ways. One, they're buying more nutritious food for their families. That's the most important thing that they've been able to do with their new income. And secondly, that they've sent at least one of their kids to school for the first time. So we have over 1,100 kids that have now been enrolled in school for the first time without us ever being an education nonprofit. These are kids that are now going to school because their parents finally have an income that they're able to send them. Many have asked, how have we gotten started, or what are some of the ways that we got started? As you can imagine, an aid worker and wife of a worship pastor are both not the most lucrative careers, I would say. So, we had to get very creative in terms of how do we fundraise, how do we get more people involved, and how do we share our movement so that others will join us. So, some of the ways is we've really thought, how can we do some creative marketing just at $20 each, trying to get a movement of people to give. We've had over 10,000 supporters come alongside us so far. And on average, every $1,500 we raise ends up supporting an entrepreneur who ends up caring for about 500 people in their community. So one of the ways that we've creatively raised money when we got started is through our charcoal efficient stove program. I don't know for those who know much about charcoal efficient stoves, one of the largest killers of women and children in the world right now is from women breathing in smoke from cooking over open fires. So it kills about 4 million women and children every year because most are having to cook every day, not knowing that they're breathing in toxic smoke that is equal to about smoking 2 packs of cigarettes per day. And when you have a child strapped to your back, they're also breathing in that smoke as well. So a fuel-efficient stove not only contains that smoke, but then it cooks your food faster, saves you half as much charcoal. There's a lot of benefits for the consumer to have a fuel-efficient stove because it's really helping their livelihood. But for us, it's really beneficial because it's actually preventing them from getting respiratory illnesses from otherwise cooking over open fires. So one of the ways that we launched is we sold a bar of charcoal soap, or a lump of coal, for Christmas. So we said you could put coal in your stocking, and by doing that, you're going to help provide one woman with a charcoal-efficient stove. This was my poor roommate at the time in our apartment, and I'm sure she's embarrassed that this is her photo. But we started out, just out of my apartment and Jody's home in Iowa, and have grown from there. And then our online campaigns of mobilizing supporters, and I love this story because I think so often we think we need to be rich to make a difference. We think we need to have a lot of money saved. We think we need to first make our millions with our business before we can give back. When in actuality, the most profound difference that we've seen and the most generosity has come from actually ordinary Americans giving creatively. So I'm going to share, this is Mandy's story, who has, to put it in perspective, this last World Water Day, she is a mom in Colorado Springs. She raised $35,000 in 5 days through her efforts. But this was her 2 years ago. We wanted to really thank her for her gifts. She just was blogging and sharing our story and raising funds for us, so we wanted to thank her.
Diana, when she was 4 years old, her well in her village broke down, and she remembers her dad, him and a bunch of the other village men standing around trying to figure out how to fix this well. And that moment kind of birthed in her this desire to be the one to figure that out. It's been incredible to see how all of my friends living in this small community in Colorado Springs using our really small gifts. I mean, most of us have several small kids and we're busy, and to see us using something small like making enchiladas or taking pictures or making cupcakes or even donating a book or a piece of art, how all of those small little things have added up. The fantastic thing about Diana is that the work she's doing is so extraordinary because she's saving the urgent, very now need of clean water and also the future need of economic growth in the community and hope and dignity. It's multifaceted and it's beautiful. I love Diana. I think she is incredible and inspiring. I love that she's fighting for heaven in Uganda. I love that I get to be a small part of that. If I could meet Diana, I would give her a hug and I would say thank you.
No! What in the world? Hi, Wendy. You gotta be kidding me! Oh, Diana, it's so nice to meet you. Oh, I can't believe it. That's so crazy. I can't believe you're at my house.
Yeah, I came to say thank you for all you're doing.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for all you're doing. Oh, I'm so thankful I get to be a small part of what you're doing in Uganda.
It's not really small because without it, what is happening in Uganda won't go on. It's really big.
Oh, thank you for saying that.
It's very big.
Oh.
Right. So, like I had said before, because of people like Mandy, every well in an entire district has now been fixed just because of ordinary people like her giving their time, giving their energy, giving their resources to come alongside us. To put it in perspective, our organization in the last 6 years has raised $3 million, $100 at a time. It's really a community of people that have gotten behind us to help us get where we are today, and we couldn't do it without people like Mandy. So just a little bit of the ripple effect, as I was saying, we've now created just about 1,000 jobs, people working right now. Those entrepreneurs are now caring for about 1.3 million people every day with access to clean water, to healthcare, nutritious food through helping farmers, and fuel-efficient stoves by making and selling them in local markets. So the ripple effect is really profound when you think about how you're helping create one job and how that job can impact an entire community. And this is our
You are
this is the
our
last video
trailblazer because
how you see the world now.
how you raise your children, and how you give shapes the future. And you are who we've been looking for. Together, we need to fight for a world where no child is born into extreme poverty. The Adventure Project started with the knowledge that what people want most in the world is not a handout, it's a good job. Instead of aid, we provide men and women with the tools and training to become profitable entrepreneurs. We do this because jobs allow moms and dads to care for their families, to buy healthy food, visit the doctor, and send their kids to school. For someone living in extreme poverty, a job is precious and priceless. Since 2010, our programs have impacted over 1 million people with clean water, healthcare, nutritious food, and a safer environment. We have proven working works. But we're just getting started. The Adventure Project's goal is to move 1 million people out of extreme poverty by 2030. The first step is to create 1,000 jobs in the next year. Yes, 1,000 jobs for men and women. This means doing what we've done in our first 6 years in one. To get there, we need you. We need you to help us deepen our impact to meet our goal, to build a future our grandkids will be proud of. Imagine if we all work together to help others work. If together, we invested in a future without extreme poverty.
So that video kicked off this year's campaign where we've been really searching how do we scale, how do we grow. We have incredible data back from our partners, some of whom have done incredible studies showing that just, for example, having one healthcare worker in a village reduces child mortality 27%. So that is an incredible social ROI when you think about how much impact you can create by giving people the tools and training to lift themselves out of poverty. One of the coolest features that we think is cool that we're going to be releasing soon is the opportunity to actually support an entrepreneur directly. We had done a powerful campaign to help fuel-efficient stove workers. We had 200 women that wanted to be trained to become profitable entrepreneurs. Most have been working by teaching themselves, and so we come alongside them and provide the training and mentorship. 90% of them still have not opened a bank account before, so how can we help them get into the financial system? How do we give them financial management training? Some of them have employees, some of them don't. But the point is, at the end of the 2-year mentorship program, which we're calling kind of business in a box, that they will be selling over 200 stoves a year in terms of their growth. So really setting them on a path to become profitable and successful entrepreneurs. at the end of the spring, we realized that we were a little bit short in funding. We had 25 women left that we weren't able to support. So when we were there in May, we thought, well, what if we told each of their stories and put them online? Maybe that would compel people to give. So this is launching in a few weeks, and it allows people to see just some of their powerful stories. You can read some of the things that they've said about how they will grow their businesses. So, as Agnes said, I'd be proud to have a bank account, put the savings in there, and then I could deal with problems as they arise. And so this is what, you could click on Agnes, and she works alongside her husband right now, and is 32, and she has seven children. Some, because I met her, some were actually from, both her and her husband are widowed, and so this is their second marriage for both of them. So it's been fun to see her and be able to know that soon we'll be able to help them become thriving entrepreneurs. And then, we also work really hard to provide a lot of transparency so people can see exactly where their gifts go and how the funding is being dispersed and what sort of things we're able to provide those entrepreneurs with. And the third way that we really compel people to give is just by giving monthly, beyond these fundraising campaigns, beyond being able to pick out an entrepreneur and provide them with a donation. We have a membership program called The Collective, which is really incredible for us as people that have bought into our vision, and they say, I just want my money going to the most impactful causes, so I want to support all 4 of your portfolio. So each quarter, they're funding a different part of our portfolio with their monthly gifts. Some people give $100, software update. It's almost done. I was nearly there. Some provide $1,000 a month, some provide $3. We have a lot of wide range of people who just want to be part of this idea of building a movement to help end extreme poverty in our lifetime by giving effectively. So then, this group each month gets an email from us with a story of an entrepreneur that they've helped and how that entrepreneur's life has changed. I just want to end quickly with a story of Joy, who was a woman I met 6 years ago when we were launching the Adventure Project, and I interviewed her about how her life has changed. And she's just an incredible woman. And she had actually, before she started working, I asked her, how is your life different? And she shared a story that her husband was actually killed in the Rwandan genocide. He was Ugandan, but he was sent over to fight from the military. And so that left her with 3 small kids and no safety net. So she actually moved into a storage container with her children and spent most of her life living in a storage container, walking around to different charities and begging for food. She said the storage container was so small that she couldn't lay down fully because she couldn't stretch out her legs at night. That's how small it was. And, she saw this job come up and she thought, well, I'm going to put my name in the hat and I'm going to try and apply. Living Hoods came along and was training women to become community healthcare workers. And she was hired. Now she provides access to critical life-saving healthcare to 700 people in her community and is earning a living doing so. As I said, the most important part of having a community healthcare worker is that they're reducing child mortality 27%, which is an unheard of statistic in terms of effectiveness of this program and cost effectiveness of being able to get these access to critical drugs to kids in need. So, and then I was able to visit her a few years ago, and this is her new 1-bedroom apartment that she was kind enough to let me in and show me around. But she just, she said a great quote where she said, before, I'll just read it to you real quick. Before I could live in a tiny room and not look at myself. I could go to the market and not think about myself. Nobody knew me. But now I have a name, and now I am somebody. Thank you so much.
We have time for a few questions for Becky, so if you have questions about her great work, please raise your hand. Do not be shy. The students, by the way, at lunch were by no means shy, which was great. Kudos to the new students. I told Nikolai that was the best opening day lunch we've ever had in terms of student participation, so kudos. Okay, question right over here.
Hi. I haven't really formulated a question, but I wanted to make a comment. Thank you for coming, by the way, because it has allowed me to think about the things that we take for granted so much that involve, specifically that involve infrastructure, and how on the simplest level, they just don't have it in other places. And the broken wells, for example. And it's just something that we take for granted and don't have to think about.
Absolutely. Yeah. If I could nerd out for a second, the coolest part I think about this community healthcare model is that most people don't know that a third of all drugs on the market right now in East Africa are actually counterfeit from China. So you have people, especially malaria meds, unsure of whether the drugs they're even buying are real or sugar pills. So that is terrifying and something that we don't have to think about. Because there's such a fragmented market, by the time they reach a local health clinic, the drugs have often been marked up 420%. So with this model, being able to buy the drugs in bulk, guarantee their effectiveness, and get them out to registered healthcare promoters is revolutionary. Most children die of preventable diseases. The treatments cost less than a cup of coffee. So really we have a supply chain issue of how do you get those drugs to people who need it most, quickly and affordably. And so this is a fascinating hub and spoke model where you're bringing women in, training them, and then they're going back out to their communities and being able to provide health care. The coolest part is they also just gave each woman a cell phone. So now she has medical records of every single one of her villages, every single one of her people in her village. And I was like, I don't even think my doctor has a medical record. I mean, like, I honestly, every time I go somewhere new, they have to like transfer. So really cool program providing really innovative ways and methods of just getting the right things to the right places in the right time.
Steve, right here.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for coming. My name is Steve Rice. I'm an entrepreneurship instructor at the Arkansas School for Math, Science, and the Arts. Fortunate to have some of my students here. I would like we live on the edge of a very poor part of our country, the Alabama Black Belt and the Delta, and there's lots of opportunity here. Could you, if some of, for example, us and my students specifically are interested in making an impact here at home, what would be your advice from the perspective you have of making an impact through entrepreneurship?
Oh gosh, there's so much you can do. Speaker's choice. You know, I always go back to this, but when I was starting the Adventure Project, I didn't really know anyone like me. I'm very blessed, but I didn't have connections like I had at my other organization, and I just thought, you know, who am I to start something? There was a moral compass issue of knowing, I know there's a huge problem that exists and I know it's not being filled, but do I have what it takes to actually be able to make this happen? And so I pitched my idea to numerous people. One became a board member, and he had been an executive at Capital One in charge of marketing. And he said, tell me all the reasons why you want to do this. And so I listed him off, right? And then he said, tell me all the reasons why you shouldn't do this. And it was an interesting question because I thought, well, I guess the only reason would be that I might fail. And he paused and he said, okay, well then this is what you're gonna do. He's like, you're just gonna keep working. Because what happens is, everyone who starts something is so fixated on failure, and you are not gonna spend any of your time worrying about failure. You're just gonna be working. So use all that free space to just put your head down and keep working. And that's actually was so enlightening to me because I just said, okay, I'm not going to second guess myself. I'm not going to have doubts. I'm just going to fake it till we make it. That was our tagline for the first year. And we literally made a Google Doc. My co-founder was a mom to 6 kids. Like, we had no right to say that we were going to do this thing. No one gave us permission. We just knew we had to do it. So we made a Google Doc and we launched in 5 weeks. Like, and the Google Doc was ridiculous. It was like, open a bank account, build a board, become nonprofit registered, fly to Haiti. Like, it looked crazy, but we just started checking them off the list. So I guess my greatest advice is, like, don't worry about failure. If you have something you're so passionate about and you know in your heart that it will work, doesn't mean that you might not pivot 100 times to get it to where you want it to be, but have faith in yourself that you can do it. And surround yourself with great people who want to lift you up and help you do it.
Yes, we have a question right here. Here comes the microphone.
Do you let them choose which project or what do they want to do, or do you have something that you know that there's an opportunity or there's a need for, and then they choose which project they want to be an entrepreneur from?
Great question. So we support local organizations that are already doing this work, and we provide them with the capital to scale in most cases. So they already have a business model that is working, and really they need access to more funding. That's the biggest gap in sub-Saharan Africa, is that there are so many incredibly talented people out there who just don't have access to the support to help their ideas grow. So it's all on them. We empower them to do their jobs and have the faith that they're going to do them well. It doesn't mean we monitor and we travel and visit them every few months, but really we see it as a partnership where we're saying, how can we provide our resources to help be the gas to make your vehicle go?
Yeah, okay, Molly, we'll start with you and then we'll get to Chul.
Hi, once again, I'm Molly Henniger. I'm a second-year student here at the Clinton School, and I'm interested in the mentorship side of what you do. So besides training those hard skills that people need to work the jobs, what kind of investment is there in softer skills like leadership, communication, group collaboration, that kind of thing?
Yeah, great question. Because I think that is also stuff that's really hard to track, right? Like, what does it mean to be a good mentor? And that's stuff that I always really try and figure out. What does mentorship mean? 2 quick examples. So for the female healthcare worker program, they actually go to their site at least twice a week, and they'll do remedial training. So oftentimes, there's different parts of keeping up with your medical license as a healthcare worker. So there's educational training, but then there's also leadership training, as well as entrepreneurship training, where they'll reward the entrepreneur of the month, or the woman who made the most sales, or woman who helped deliver the most babies, just to get that little competitive spirit going, and then they can share ideas. For the Stove entrepreneurs, the women that we're training kind of throughout Kenya and now into Tanzania, it's really about having those mentors travel to them, because they're often a little bit remote, and the mentors will spend a few hours with them a few times a week, or just providing them with skills that they may need. So that could be financial model training, it could be marketing. I was actually really surprised when I was there a few months ago that there were so many women who said, I'm now talking. Because we forget sometimes in different cultures, women might be less encouraged to be so vocal and be marketing their skills. So I've learned how to market myself. And so it's really tailored, which I actually think is really awesome, because we're trying to figure out what are some of the weak points in their business. How do we provide some of that support to remove those bottlenecks?
Chul.
Well, thank you for coming. So thank you very much for your presentation. Very exciting. And you are doing a great job. Okay, thank you. So my name is Chul Park. I'm an assistant professor at the Clinton School. So I'm very interested in the use of technology, information and communication technology for international development or humanitarian development. So how do you use technology So briefly, you mentioned during your presentation. So are there any challenges or limitations, or on the other hand, so any impact, benefits, the use of technology? So.
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we've done actually with, I say, our Android app that's in the field collecting data in real time, is it's a app that was primarily originally built to track water points to see if wells were still working. And it's a Dutch organization that I'm on the US board of. And we've adapted that app to provide the quantitative and qualitative questions for entrepreneurs. So in that case, we didn't have to build anything new. It was more about us just licensing the technology to be able to customize it based on what questions we had. And then oftentimes our survey questions follow the PPI index, which is called Progress Out of Poverty Index, developed by Grameen Bank. And so that helps us determine that we have standards that are aligning with global benchmarks so that we're really capturing the right data. You mentioned the challenge. I think the biggest challenge, frankly, is being a nonprofit. We put so much emphasis on supporting programs that donors sometimes forget that we need this operating support so that we can really build great programs, right? They can't be mutually exclusive. And I think so oftentimes donors think, well, 100% of my money needs to go to that program so I know it's working. But on the other hand, well, if we had great tech, we would be able to tell you faster that it is working well or that it's not working and we need to adjust. So I think there's always that balance of us trying to always communicate why operating support is actually so critical to nonprofit organizations, because you're going to get a more effective product, which is what you really want in the end.
I know we got more questions, and that's fine, and I hope you will come up and talk to Becky afterwards, but I also know some people have to get back to work, and we thank you for coming today. Becky, I got one thing to say. I do think that you're probably going to get a lot of emails from Clinton School students who are going to want to do their international public service projects with you, because I think today you made one heck of a sale, and it is one heck of a project. Let's thank Becky for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.